Om Shanti, and welcome to today's session. I'd like to do a short recap of what we've learned so far. One thing that you might find new in what we've learned so far is how the soul and the body work together. Everything begins in the soul first, means thoughts begin in the soul. And then when a decision is reached, there's a desire, and when a decision is reached, then the action happens. Whilst the action is happening, there is something else which is also happening, and that is recording. Whatever action, and I gave a list of actions last time, thinking, speaking, walking, talking, these are all actions. Whatever action is taking place, it is being recorded. It is leaving a mark. It is leaving an impression. And depending on my consciousness, depending on my way of thinking, that impression, that scar, can either be light or it can be deep. For example, if you draw a line continuously on stone, then it becomes like a groove. It becomes very deep. You draw a line on sand. Within a few seconds, the wind blows and that line disappears. If you draw a line on water, it's just literally for less than half a second. But if you draw a line on light, it doesn't leave a mark. It doesn't leave an impression. So the same applies to I, the soul. When I associate myself with this physical body, with matter, or anything to do with matter, then the impressions left on the soul are very deep. Because I'm repeating that action, so it becomes deeper and deeper. Depending on my consciousness, if I have this awareness that I am a soul, a being of light, then the impression, the influences, the recordings are not so deep. Means cleansing and healing will not be required to that same extent. But when I consider myself to be associated with the physical, then the impressions hurt, the impressions stay with us for a long time, the impressions need to be erased. You'll see we spend so much of our life trying to forget what has happened in the past. So today we are going to move on. We're going to move away from the soul and now focus our attention to where I, the soul, come from. Yesterday, I said a story, and within that story, I asked that you fill in the blanks. And I was very impressed with the answers because the answers were all similar and the answers were all correct. So, in short, that is the story of the soul. It lives at home with its parents. It looks out after it's done all of its work, whatever. It looks out, it looks down. And when it looks down, it is attracted to the color, to the activity, to the glamour. Because if you are in a plane and you look down on the earth, even if it's nighttime, there's lights and glitter and glamour. And if it's daytime, it's it's blue and green. There's an attraction. And so I, the soul, am drawn to want to come down onto this physical earth, which yesterday I explained is also the stage. I explained all the elements required for the stage, for this world drama. So today we're going to spend time now talking about the home. Because if there's a stage, if there's my workplace, then there must also be a home. And how there is a desire for the soul, the desire that the soul has to go home. That desire emerges when the soul is tired. That desire emerges when it feels that things are coming to a head, to an end. And so, before all of that happens, there is a thought inside. It's time to go home. So, let us discuss the home. It can only be called a home if there is somebody living there. If there is nobody living there, it's called a house. But a home is when there is somebody living there and that person or that being welcomes us. In the first session, we talked about the definition of yoga. Yoga means to join, yoga means communion, it means to come together. And so, the first union, the first joining we see within our life is the soul and the physical body. We had many examples of how the soul works with the physical body. The soul and body do not become one. They always are separate. The SIM is separate from the phone. But when the SIM is put in the phone, then they work very well together. So we had many examples of how the soul and body work together. That joining is natural. It's organic. It's happening. You don't have to do anything about it. The soul and body working together. However, there is another joining, there is another communion which requires a little effort but is much more rewarding. And that joining or that communion or that connecting is our connection, means the connection of the soul with the Supreme Soul, with God. And so today we will be looking at the subject of God. And within the subject of God, there are many different opinions, lots of differences of opinion. At the same time, there are many universal opinions. So we will be looking at both the differences of opinion and the universal opinions. So now, when we mention the word God, some people may have an allergic reaction to this word. Some people might feel, well, not really sure. They may have no opinion whatsoever. Some people might have feelings of love and devotion for God. All of these various feelings and opinions are there. But one thing is for certain, no matter how much confusion there is about God, confusion in the sense that does he exist? Does he not exist? If he exists, then why is the state of the world as it is at present? So the confusion is so much that many of us would just like, forget it, I don't want to know. There's no clarity and there's no connection either. So what I was saying is that it doesn't matter how much confusion there is about God, but when it comes to any struggle in my life, or if I've lost a loved one, or if I'm going through some difficult time, then automatically, unconsciously, the soul turns towards God. It doesn't matter that it's for a last resort, as a last resort, but, and you will see this throughout history, you will see this across all the cultures, at a time of desperation, at a time of last resort, human beings turn to God. And we can see this happening right now even. Whilst COVID is happening, many have stepped up their prayers. Many have stepped up wanting to do for others and not knowing what to do. And so, is God a last resort? Is God, when we're desperate, why do we turn to such a being when there is so much confusion surrounding that being? So today it would be nice if we could have a formal introduction to God. And the introduction has to be such that it clears it clears a lot of confusion and the doubts that we have. The introduction has to means I have to experience it. Because if I don't experience it, then I won't believe it. Sometimes as children, we were asked, do you believe in God? You might have even been asked the same question in your lifetime. Do you believe in God? So, is God an entity that I need to believe in, or I have a choice whether I believe in Him or not? So, we want an experience of God in our life, but we also want logic. We want the logic that, yes, what you're saying makes sense. So let us look at what is required in a formal introduction. So if we can have the third slide, what is required in a formal introduction? Supposing you have to fill in a form when you're applying for a passport or something like that, then what information is needed? So 5 things we need to look at today within the formal introduction: name, what he looks like, because if I know what he looks like, then when I meet him, like, yeah, I know you, I've heard about you. Address, why do we need an address? Because whenever we think of something or someone, the background is also included. Like when you think of me, for example, if you think of me throughout the day, I don't know if you do, then you will think of Lester. You will see the background will also come into your consciousness. So we need an address because we're going to put that address into the satellite navigation system because we need to go there often. It's going to be put into our subconscious and it's going to be put under favorites. The other thing that we need to know about God is, what does He do all day long? What does He do and what does He not do? Because we are seeing so much suffering, then one thing is very obvious, that He does not interfere in the suffering. He is not part of the suffering. He didn't cause the suffering. He didn't do anything for the suffering to happen. So He's not involved in the suffering. That's one thing God does not do. God cannot bring the dead back to life. I suppose He could if He wanted to, but He doesn't. And there's a reason for that also. And you will learn the reason for why God does not interfere, because it's a law that is happening. And that law is, as you sow, so shall you reap. We will look at that on another date and why He doesn't interfere in that. Now, after the word occupation, you will see qualities and attributes. Somebody may have a job. They can be a teacher, an engineer, a doctor, whatever, whilst having the qualifications for that job. At the same time, they also have their own specialities, their own personality. Like somebody could be a teacher at work, they could be strict, etc., assertive, all the qualities needed to be a teacher, but at home, they're loving, kind, caring, all of these things. So, occupation and the qualifications required for that occupation are separate from qualities. When you apply for a job, they want to know your qualifications. And so today, we're going to look at this whole subject of God. And God is a position. God is a job that needs to be done. And If God has a job of being God, what are the qualifications necessary to do that job? So, we will be looking at many different aspects. One aspect I would like to look at is the universal factors that we know about God. Universal means the whole universe would probably, most likely, 99% agree to certain things about God. So, what are those universal factors? If you can bring up the next slide. Universal factors are: God is truth, God is love, God is forgiveness. God is truth. You probably heard that somewhere. God is mercy, and God is love. The other thing that is universal is that within each religion there is the mention or the praise of light. Within Christianity, within the first few pages of the Bible, the expression is, let there be light. God, there's another expression also within the Bible which holds a lot of truth, and that is, God created man in his own image. Man, the human, everyone's is different. Every human being is different. And yet the expression is, God created man in his own image, means I, the soul, am a being, a point of light, God, with whom I have a relationship. Consciously, unconsciously, knowingly, unknowingly, we, all souls of the world, have a relationship with God. So this is why you will see within many cultures, within many religions, there is the expression, we are children of God. Or there is the expression, God the Father. Even within the Hindu religion, the word Param Pita, which means Supreme Father. One thing I find very entertaining is that when within the Hindu religion they go to worship God, whatever their opinion or idea of God is, then the first line that they say within their prayer is, you are the mother and you are the father. Tumhi ho mata, pita tumhi. And who is saying those words? The husband is saying those words, and the wife is also saying the same words. She says, you are the mother and you are the father. Husband says, you are the mother and you are the father. Should the husband not be saying, you are the in-laws? Because if it's the wife's mother and father, then that means it's the husband's in-laws. But not like that. Every being connects with God on the basis of two things. There are on the basis of two things, I will be able to remember God. One is the relationship. When there's a relationship, it's easy to remember God. It's easy to remember a person if there's a relationship. Like if there's a relationship of a mother and daughter, the mother will find it easy to remember the daughter because of that bond, because of that relationship. The other way to remember a person or to remember God is on the basis of their qualities, their virtues. And so this is how, in meditation, we are going to connect with the divine. First connection, first yoga joining is soul and body. The second one, which is more beneficial but more of a struggle, is the connection of the soul with the Supreme Soul. We mentioned the factors which are common. Now, there are certain other things which are also common within us, and that is we are all souls. We all look the same. God created man in his own image, means he is a point of light, and I, the soul, am also a point of light. Just because he is God, it does not mean he is bigger in size. It doesn't mean that he's vaster. So, we are all souls. That is one common factor that we all have. Another common factor that we all have is that every single soul has the same qualities. The 7 qualities, the 7 virtues of the soul are there within each and every soul. The only difference is my ability to access what is already there, but what has become covered, what has become lost due to the rubbish that's accumulated, due to the rust that's accumulated on the soul. So this is also an expression that we use. Every soul has some goodness. And yes, every soul has the 7 qualities. The other common factor or universal factor is that we all have, the soul has the same parent. So if the soul has the same parent, what does that make all of us? How are we connected with each other? And you will see throughout history, we have become more and more connected with each other. We go beyond the barriers of society and color and surname and where we're from, religion. All of these barriers we have crossed over time. Now there's this understanding that we are what is called humanity. And so if we all have the same parent, then that makes us into a brotherhood. Children of God, our relationship with each other, we are connected, we are all brothers. And so this is why, because we are all brothers, this is why you will see there is this inner desire, inner feeling to want to help another human being, to want to help other people, because we are connected. We are not separate islands doing our own thing. Another universal opinion about God is his personality, God's personality. If I was to describe God's personality in 3 words, then those 3 words are: God is truth, God is beautiful. I'll explain this beautiful in a few moments. And God is benevolent. You might have heard these 3 words before somewhere. In Hindi, the words are Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, means truth, beautiful, and benevolent. These three words describe God. I've up until now spoken about common opinions or universal opinions about God. There are, however, contradictory opinions. And this is where the confusion comes in. Someone says God is like this, someone says God doesn't exist, someone says God is all over the place, God is in you, and God is in me, and God is in nature. So that is where the confusion starts. If we look at the common factors, there is no confusion. But when we look at the other factors which each religion talks about, then there is a lot of conflicting ideas, confusing ideas. However, we did say that we would look at name, form, address, qualities, and qualification, the formal introduction to God. God's name has to have a meaning. We can call him God, that is the position, that is the title. But even somebody who has a title, they still have a name. So supposing you have the title, you are the President of America, but that President of America still has a name. And so the name for God is one which has a lot of meaning. Some of you may have heard this name, some of you might find it different, but don't look at the name. Try and focus more on the relationship, because that is where the real attainment is. What's in a name anyway? So the name that I'm going to mention to you, it means benefactor and seed. Benefactor and seed. God is the seed of the human world. It's not that I am born from God, no. But the seed means the seed has the potential of the whole tree. The seed has great potential. It knows what the tree is all about. And yes, the seed in the world that we plant, those seeds are non-living. They cannot express, but they contain the whole tree. So God is the seed of the whole human world. And why am I using this expression of tree? A tree has many factors. A tree has a seed, a tree has roots, a tree has a trunk, a tree has branches, a tree has leaves. And so in one of our future sessions, we will be looking at all of these and what they represent. So, God's position and God's name. The name is Shiva, Shiva, which means seed and benefactor. But we're not going to refer to him by his first name. We're going to refer to him by the relationship that we have with him. The relationship that we have with God is that he is our parent. And so there is one word which you may have heard before, and that word is used in many cultures. Within the Parsi culture, I heard it used in Nigeria when I was there. It's used within the Bengali culture. That word is Baba. B-A-B-A. Baba means father. In Nigeria, I would hear somebody calling an old man, "Hey, Baba." And so this word is known throughout the world, Baba. It's a very loving word. It describes our relationship with God. Name, Shiva, relationship, Father. Shiv, Baba. And so throughout the day, whenever possible, I need to connect with Baba, that point of light, the one who creates man in his own image, the creator. Another universal factor, God is also called the creator. So now the question arises, if he's called the creator, what exactly does he create? Because if we look at the state of the world, then we're thinking, well, is this the kind of world that God creates? Is this the best he can do? Creator doesn't mean he creates the situation, doesn't mean he creates the circumstances. So, what is he the creator of? Supposing supposing somebody makes lasagna. So they make a very beautiful tray of lasagna and they will say, I made lasagna. So, yes, they made the dish lasagna, but did they make the lasagna sheets? Did they make the mushrooms? Did they make the corn flour for the white sauce? Did they make the cheese? Did they make the vegetables that went into that lasagna? But they're saying, I made lasagna. Supposing somebody makes an outfit, a dress or a skirt or something, and they'll say, I created this outfit. Did they make the material to create that outfit? Did they make the buttons? Did they make the thread for that outfit? Supposing somebody makes a painting and they sign it in the corner, whatever their name is. Did they create the canvas? Did they create the paint? It was already there. They got it and they did something with it. The material and thread, they got it, they did something with it. The lasagna sheet, the mushrooms, the white sauce, etc., they put it together. But the basic factors, the basic essentials were already there. So God is called the creator. What exactly does God create? Does he create the soul or was it already there? Because we learned in our last week's lesson, we learned that the soul is eternal, it's immortal, it never created, and it is not destroyed. The soul cannot be destroyed. Like I said last week, you can't burn it, you can't drown it, you can't cut it in half, you can't do anything to the soul. It is eternal. So, Shiv, Baba, the name. What's in a name? We put that to one side if we don't like the name. Then you can create whatever name you want for him. Some use the name Allah, God, Ishwar. There's all sorts of names for God. Some people even use swear words for God. When they're talking to God, the soul turns towards God when it's desperate. When it needs help, it will turn towards God of its own accord. It doesn't even need to be taught. Anyway, so Shiv Baba address is home because in the home a parent is necessary. The home becomes a home when there is somebody there. And thirdly, form. What does God look like? It looks like I, the soul. And because it looks similar, that's why it makes life easier for us to recognize God. In some cultures, there's this understanding or there's this concept that God is so bright, so radiant that if you see God, then your eyes will you will go like that. No, we will never do that with our Father. That I can't tolerate the radiance. Yes, God is powerful, but it's not that He's brighter than 1,000 suns or anything like that. Even one sun, one physical sun, you can't look at it with your eyes. It blinds you, you go like that. God is not like that. He is cool and radiant. There's a coolness and a radiance at the same time. Like, for example, the moon. It gives that coolness, but there is the radiance there also. Points of light. In every culture, throughout history, God is mentioned as light. Now, qualifications. That status that God has, creator, sustainer, all of the words, all the praise that is there for God, He has to have done something to have earned that praise. God is the most praised energy in the world. Every scripture, regardless of the religion, every scripture has praise of God. Why? What did He do? Or what is He doing? What has He done to earn all that credit, all that praise? So there are 5 factors, or you would say the criteria needed for this position of God. So if we look at the next slide, what are the 5 factors or the list of criteria required for this position of God? So the first criteria is knowledge full. God has to have full, complete knowledge of what? Because He's the director, He has to have knowledge of the whole play, the whole drama, because we're all on this world stage. And if we're on a stage, then obviously a drama is happening. And so He has full knowledge of the play, of the plot, means He knows the beginning, the middle, and the end of this whole story. At the same time, God has to be powerful. In many cultures, He is called Almighty, the Almighty Authority. But what is God's power? Because one thing we're noticing when we look at the state of the world, then He doesn't have. Maybe He does, but He doesn't use the power to bring the dead back to life. He doesn't have the power to change the course of events. He doesn't use His power for that kind of thing. He's very particular how and where He uses His power. The third word, beyond. He has to be beyond birth and death. Why? Because if we say God was born, then anything that's born, guaranteed, it will also die. So it doesn't make sense, it doesn't sound right to say, oh, God died on a particular day, or He was born on a particular day. No, He does not come into this cycle of rebirth. He does not enter the cycle of birth and death. The other thing that God is beyond is happiness and sorrow. It's not that one day, if we praise God, if we worship God, that will make him happy. And the days that we don't praise him, that we don't worship him, then he becomes unhappy. No. God does not come into feelings. His feelings don't fluctuate. He remains stable throughout. And so we will look at what feelings or what thoughts God has. And why do I say thoughts and feelings? Because if God is the supreme soul, out of all the souls in the world, he is supreme because of these 5 factors. And so, because he's a soul, then definitely within a soul, there are thoughts, which we discussed last week. It's the soul that creates the thoughts. So God is beyond happiness and sorrow. He's also beyond praise and defamation. Beyond means he remains unaffected. So if I praise God, he's going to be happy. And if I defame him, he's going to be unhappy. No, that does not happen. He remains stable. He remains the same throughout. Another criteria or qualification to be God is that God means the highest. Not anybody can be higher than God. So if we say, well, God's parents, supposing we use the word God's parents, then that means it makes the parents higher than God, because parents give birth. And so naturally, they're higher than the child. So God does not have anyone above him. He doesn't have a teacher, he doesn't have a guide, he doesn't have a guru, he doesn't have parents, nothing. Nobody makes God into what he is. That they can take the credit. It's like I know people that take credit of somebody else's achievements. Like, for example, a parent may say that I made my child into what he is today. So they take full credit for their child. Or a teacher may say that this person is because of what I have done for him. So no, God does not have anyone higher or above him. Now, the 5th criteria is that God has to be accepted by all. And then we know that there are certain beings, great beings, who are not accepted by all. For example, Krishna might be accepted by a certain community, but not by the Western community. Christ might be accepted by a certain community, but not by the Hindu community. And so this is where the differences of opinion come. So God has to be, if he's the Father and we're all brothers, he has to be accepted by every brother, every soul. We have a relationship with him, and that relationship is what we are going to work on. So now we've covered a lot of ground: name, form, address, qualities, and qualification. Qualities we need to still look at. Qualities are different from qualifications. God has many, many qualities. Whatever qualities I, the soul, need, then they are topped up by God. So we have the 7 qualities of the soul. The reason we don't feel them or see them because we are running on red. We are short. We are lacking in, they're there, but we are lacking. They're not 100%. So now, if I want to go for a top up, if I want to recharge, then I have to connect to the ocean of virtues, the ocean of qualities. Why did I use the word ocean? Because the ocean is vast. The ocean, stand on one side, you cannot see the other side. God is the same in qualities, not in size. And this is where the mistake happens, that we think God is vast in size. No, parent, He's not vast in size. But whatever quality and to however much extent I need a quality, then in that department, His vast means He Himself is not going to run out if He gives to us. He's the bestower, so naturally He will give, but that doesn't mean He's going to run out. If you take a truck full of water out of an ocean, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make the ocean any less. And so, the 7 qualities that I need, my resource, my wholesaler, my top up, the mains. You would call God the mains, and I the soul am the plug. And so I the soul plug into the mains means I connect with the mains. I don't become one. We are separate. The plug is separate from the mains, and I can draw as much power as I want. The mains does not look at the appliance. All the mains needs is that plug. What's on the other side of that plug doesn't make a difference, whether it's a kettle, an iron, a computer, or a phone, it doesn't matter. So God is the same. The mains and all different souls will connect with God. So doesn't matter which country they're from, doesn't matter their religious background, they've connected to the highest being. And so they will get that current, that flow of power will be there. So that was the criteria, 5 things. All knowledgeful, powerful, highest, beyond, and accepted by all. Let's spend a few seconds, literally seconds, looking at the differences of opinion. There are many differences of opinion about God. One difference of opinion is that He's omnipresent, that He's everywhere. He's in you, He's in me, He's in the carpet, He's in the chair, He's in the wall. Is He in the terrorist? Is He in the rapist? Is He in this virus? Does it make sense for God to be everywhere? And if God is everywhere, supposing I say God is everywhere, then why would I need to remember Him? Why would I need to connect Him? Why would I call out to Him at a time of need? And so this whole concept of omnipresent, it doesn't stand to reason that God would be in a murderer, in a rapist, in bad weather, or even in the virus. So we cannot say God is omnipresent. I can think about God, but that doesn't mean He's everywhere. Supposing all day long I think about my child. Yeah, my child might be far away from me, and I'm thinking about him. That doesn't mean He's everywhere. Wherever I go and I'm thinking about Him, that is different from Him being everywhere. Another opinion which is becoming more and more stronger these days is that there is no such thing as God. So if God does not exist, then there's no worry, there's no concern, and I don't need to think about punishment. Because there's also this common idea that God punishes. But if I'm saying God doesn't exist, then I don't need to worry. Then there's no punishment. There's nobody out there who's checking up on me. Another concept of God is that God is a human being. So maybe it's Buddha, Christ, Abraham, Moses, Muhammad, Guru Nanak. All of these are, you could call them prophet souls, or they have they are the creators of a religion. They are founding fathers of different religions throughout history. The problem here is that it doesn't fit in the criteria. The criteria said that God has to be beyond birth and death. And all of the prophet souls, all the saints, all the mystics, they are born and they die. Their birth is celebrated. The birth of Christ is celebrated. The birth of Guru Nanak is celebrated. The birth of Buddha and the death also is celebrated. So God cannot come into the cycle of birth and death, because where there's death, there's also sorrow. You will see that Christmas is a time of celebration. They celebrate the birth of Christ. And then Easter, they're not celebrating, they are remembering that they are remembering Christ and what he did. Some say that nature is God. Nature is so vast, nature is beautiful, and nature gives. Nature serves us from time immemorial. Matter, nature, or the elements, these three words mean the same thing. Nature is serving us from the beginning. Air, water, earth, fire, nature is serving us. Nature is giving non-stop, and yet we haven't taken care of nature, and this is why nature reacts. So right now I'm looking at the time, and it's time for us to close, but we've covered quite a bit of ground today. We've looked at the universal factors, we've looked at the formal introduction, we've looked at the criteria, and in tomorrow's session, we will look at the relationships that we can have with God and what is the benefit of the relationship. And so tomorrow, we're going to learn more about how to connect with that Supreme Being, because when I connect with that highest energy, what's going to happen to me? If I'm on the receiving end of God's power, vibrations, energy, vibes, call it what you want, what will happen to me? So I'm going to finish here, and I'm going to do a couple of minutes meditation commentary. And I have had a request for the presentations. So the presentation we will give after the course, as you can understand. So now we'll do a few minutes, a few seconds of meditation and connecting with the highest power. Om Shanti. my fortune, that I know God intimately. I know what He does and what He doesn't do. I, the soul, have an eternal, I have an eternal bond with the Supreme. I have a bond with the power that has been remembered throughout history. Not only is that power remembered throughout history, but He's also remembered universally. I, the soul, am a child of the Supreme. Shiv Baba is my spiritual parent, my eternal parent. I have physical parents, but I turn to the spiritual parent at a time of need. Even my physical parent remember the eternal parent. I am a child of God. I, the soul, belong to God. I am blessed. Om Shanti. Om Shanti, and we will meet tomorrow, same time, for another great session. Thank you.